consciousness. And I think of the words of Amilcar Cabral, who said that it was the white man who took us out of history, and we aim to place ourselves back in it. We aim to place ourselves back in history. We will place ourselves back in history. No one will place us back in history. We will place ourselves back in history. And we are not the minority here. If you look around, that's a lie. That's another dirty historical lie. We are the majority. Thank you.
Give it up for the Sister Maggie. Our last speaker was our brother Eugene, coordinator of the CPI, the Committee on Filipino Issues. All right, give it up for our brother Eugene.
Just continuing what Megan said, between 1898 to 1942, Philippines was a direct colony of the United States. So in 1942 to 1945, Japan invaded the Philippines because there's a Japan-American war in Second World War. The Filipinos fought the colonialists. So we have a long history of colonialism. We have been with three colonial powers: Spain, United States, and Japan. In 1946, supposedly, we were given independence by the United States. In July 4th, 1946. But this independence is not really a real independence, because our economy, our political system, our military, our culture is still being very much controlled by the United States. They put a Filipino in the government, but it's a puppet of U.S. imperialism. And so, in 1946, 1960s, there is this great development in the 1960s, wherein the youth and students were awakened because they were longing for their history that was taken away from them. So they found out that there's so-called Filipino-American War. More than 500,000 Filipinos died. It is equivalent to 20 million Americans died if there's going to be a war. So it's not a small war. What we call it is the first Vietnam War. It went from 1898 to 1970. Anyway, in 1960s, the Filipino students were awakened up. And they formed the Nationalist Youth. And they went to the workers and peasants. They integrated with the masses. And with this integration with the masses, they were also educated by the masses. So the masses learned from the intellectual analysis of the students. At the same time, the students learned from the basic problems of the masses. And that's where the New People's Army was created in 1969. Right now, this army, the Liberation Army, the New People's Army, is all over the Philippines. It has tens of thousands of members. It's got a mass base in the millions. And we have the National Democratic Front, which is coordinating all the different mass organizations, underground and above ground, legal and illegal. And they have a national office, international office, to deal with different governments in the world. Right now, they are in a so-called peace negotiation with the government. Now, this peace negotiation with the government, with the Philippine government, the reason why the government did it is because there's already a very strong revolutionary movement in the Philippines, which is being led by the New People's Army and the National Democratic Front. Now, what I would say to you is that we don't believe that the problem can be done in a reform way. There has to be a fundamental change. We have to eradicate imperialism, feudalism, and bureaucrat capitalism. We need to give people the land. We need to kick out foreign domination. We've got to have a nation. So in 1970, I was one of those students who went with the masses. Incidentally, I'm here now, that's why I'm here to you, and maybe that's a coincidence because I have to tell you the message from the Philippines of what's happening there. Because you have to know, because if things becomes worse in the Philippines, there will be a military intervention just like in Vietnam. And we have to be prepared for this. And therefore, if we are not educated, we'll just have another war in that part of the world wherein people are being killed and wherein it is part of our solidarity movement because we are both against imperialism. So, I would say that we are in solidarity with All African People's Revolutionary Party. And the reason why, because there is a strong unity between that binds us. And it is because we are both oppressed by U.S. imperialism. Secondly, we wanted self-determination for the Filipino people and the African people. Therefore, I will just end this to say, and I say, long live the anti-imperialist unity of the African people and the Filipino people. Struggle, struggle, don't be afraid. Makibaka, huwag matakot. Victory to the unity of people of color and the working people of all countries. Thank you.
So don't care where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're an African. No matter complexion, there is no rejection.
Long live the Filipino people to reclaim their land. Martin Luther King told us precisely, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And we as conscious Africans know we must support all people struggling to reclaim their land from imperialism that is oppressing humanity. Our next act will be a culture presentation, because as I said before, we know culture breeds revolution. And we must use our culture to present revolutionary ideology and motivate our people into organization. Our next act will be Sister June, excuse me. She's a student attending East St. Louis High School in 1994. She continued her education at the University of Illinois and at the State Community College. She also studied at the Center.
Your giant locks, lips thick as molasses, hanging like your staff, that fills me with your love, soothing me more than any bath. Very neat and clean, with a sense of style, having the ability to release my moisture as I flow like the Nile. Don't ever leave, my brothers, because I need you here with me to have your sons and daughters and to make my life complete. And with that, There have been too many times where our black men have been put down mentally or physically hurt because of the fact that they're black. Even some of our own people do it out of ignorance. Despite the fact that we've moved from our own establishment into this melting pot they call America, we've struggled through pain, heartache, embarrassment, turmoil, low self-esteem, and the false mentality of inferiority. We have come far. We have survived. We are strong and beautiful. Keep your heads up and God bless. Come down, selector man. Now I have a song that I've written entitled Moving. I'm sure everybody can relate. You know how you hear a song and you just can't stop moving? It just got your body just moving. Can't stop.
It keeps me going, bobbing my body down. My life is growing, showing no need to prove, captivated by rhythm.
Can y'all get with it? A little dance hall. Can everybody get together, please? Put your hands together and dance. It's a party. Can we get with it, please? Everybody. Act like y'all having some fun. You know what I'm saying?
Keeps me going. Body with harmony, and my life is growing. Showing no need to prove, captivated by rhythm.
You're moving.
The melody keeps me moving. My body with harmony, and my life is growing. Showing no need to prove, captivated by
Get too
rhythm.
next as I play. Get in the crowd next. What's the next? Next I'm about to put up on the set. Just blessed to be blessed. I'm breaking necks by the words I recite from the universal text that I hold in my right. I've been faces with eyes and more than twice. I realize your life is showing up and gamble no matter how you handle certain situations. Turns out to be the same equation. A job manifestation and revelation just can't be taken with a grain of salt. Or European will be halted to the wrong and destructively don't be caught because you've been taught better. Who the hell I act and question life? If life's really working, I say if you can't serve it, then know you don't deserve it. Now give me just a little bit more elbow room. Keep on pursuing the groove, cause you know I make you move.
Moving, soothing melody keeps me going. Bobbing my body with harmony, and my life is growing. Showing no need to prove, captivated by rhythm. Moving, soothing melody going. Bobbing my body with harmony, and my life is growing. Showing no need to prove, captivated by rhythm.
Hot like they lie, brought to your eyes, block your eyes with prosthetic genetics, making me live, representing Midwest, but on the east side of the city. Consider a pity, cause we get hot and vibe off nitty gritty, can you feel me? And that's no doubt that my mentality is wrong, but admiration for the highest and sympathy for the wrong. I go on and on, remain strong, with the cycle premonitions descending from the heavens. It ain't no question when you got the super spell of the conscious eye, and the prophetess in your presence. I see you kinda hesitant to try to step up to weak, cause we just mean doing our best to keep the green on the scene. Sing,
Moving, soothing melody keeps me going. Bobbing my body with harmony, and my life is growing. Showing no need to prove, captivated by rhythm. Moving, soothing melody keeps me going. Bobbing my body with harmony, and my life is growing. Showing no need to prove, captivated by rhythm.
And I'm feeling the move, I'm breaking my high. You bottom your head and don't care why. Can I relate with rubber, never disaster. Caught in a whirlwind where music is the master. And I'm feeling the move, I'm breaking my high. Bottom your head and don't care why. Can I relate with rubber, never disaster. Caught in a whirlwind where music is the master. That is my God and my only salvation. We live in United States Midwest region.
yeah.
Although we live in Babylon, got to get to stay strong, strong. And keep moving, I don't want to Mount Zion. Keep on moving, soothing melody keeps me going.
I know it's more than one person from the east side or from the east side or somebody say, so if you're from the east, keep on moving, you know what I'm saying?
My life is growing, showing no need to
Thank you.
captivated by rhythm.
All right, African Women's Revolutionary Union, I would like to thank you and welcome you to African Liberation Day. The union today will bring a message particularly to our sisters. To begin, sisters, we must first view ourselves as Africans. We are Africans, period. The All African People's Revolutionary Party believe that all people of African descent and ancestry, regardless where they were born or live, can contribute to the liberation and freedom of all African people. Most of the confusion that we face today as a people comes from not understanding who we are. We call ourselves African American in the U.S. We call ourselves French in France. We call ourselves West Indian in the Caribbean. This confusion resulted from being disconnected from our land-based Africa. For 500 years, Africa and her people have been exploited by capitalist and imperialist forces. Capitalism was built on the exploitation of African slavery and colonialism. Slavery, where they took us from the land, and colonialism, where they physically took over the land. These Western European powers, the capitalists, used Africa's minerals, agricultural resources, and labor, women and men, to grow rich. This left Africa, the richest continent in the world, unable to feed, give adequate housing, medical care to the masses of our people. The majority of our people cannot read. There is a lack of productive employment, and our children are dying from preventative diseases. African women are at the bottom of this scale. Under capitalism, African women face triple oppression. As Africans, we endure daily racism and national oppression, exploitation of African land and resources. Our children are being shot, lynched, and molested daily. African women worldwide work long hours in low-paid jobs. 2/3 of African households are headed by African women, 1/2 of which in poverty. Our children cannot walk the streets in safety without the fear of being shot, raped, or just harassed by the police. Education, health, and social services continue to be cut back to increase capitalist profits. 73% of African women are peasants. 25% are urban workers in industry, marketplace, or domestic. The majority of African women work 16 hours a day, do 60 to 70% of the agricultural work, 50% of the animal husbandry work, 100% of the food processing. Presently, 85% of our sisters are illiterate. African women have the highest death rate in childbirth and infant mortality rate in the world. 50% of our children die before they reach the age of 5. In industrial countries in Africa, African women make 60 cents to an African male dollar. In areas of the Caribbean, we are paid $3 to $25 a month for 10 to 12 hours a day doing domestic work. In addition, African women suffer oppression because of our gender, because we are female. Unfortunately, many African men uphold the capitalist thinking that women are inferior to them, rather than seeing African women as powerful partners in the struggle to destroy capitalism. The struggle for the development of African women is for the benefit of all of our people. As women, we are portrayed by capitalism as simply victims of African men and traditional customs, with very little knowledge of what our oppression is. We must step forward and begin to tell our own story. A story that will show that at one time African women had legal and social equality. A story that will show that African women played a central role in agriculture. And it has been reported by some of our African scholars that African women may have discovered agriculture. Our story will show that African women sat on the Council of Elders as Queen Mothers with the right to overrule